The steam hissed from the side of the engine, blanketing the platform in a thick veil just long enough for Clara Devlin to lose sight of the man. Not that she'd ever seen a man like that before. He'd stepped off the northbound train like a ghost through smoke, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a weathered buffalo hide coat stitched with beads and sinew. His black hair was thick and braided, and his face was unreadable, carved from stone and sun. Everyone saw him. No one met his eyes. And then he saw her. Her hands were still shaking as she clutched the fraying satchel. The tag pinned to her dress said Devlin transfer to Fort Bowen. But the station clerk had stopped caring hours ago, and Clara hadn't eaten since the previous morning. She was 17, alone, and afraid of what waited for her at the end of the line. A man she'd never met. A rancher with a reputation for breaking Mustangs and marrying mail-order girls young enough to bleed but not old enough to say no. "Miss!" She looked up. He was closer now. Too close. His shadow spilled across the wooden boards like a spill of ink. His voice was deep, quiet, but firm. "You are Devlin." She blinked. I'm waiting for Mr. Arliss, the rancher. I'm to be." "You're not going to him." Her mouth parted. The wind caught her hair and flung it across her cheek. "I beg your pardon." He leaned down, not threatening, but unmoved, like a mountain folding toward her. "You're coming with me." Her heart stuttered. She looked around. No one moved. The station master had gone inside. 2 soldiers near the edge of the platform looked the other way, as if pretending not to see was easier than interfering. "I don't even know who you are," she said, but her voice was too soft, and her fingers, they'd stopped gripping the satchel. He straightened and turned, walking away without waiting. Not fast, just with the confidence of a man who knew she would follow. And somehow she did. He didn't speak again until they reached the edge of the cottonwoods. The trail disappeared behind them, swallowed by dust and sky. His horse waited beneath a mesquite tree, tethered and calm. Another smaller Mustang stood beside it, saddled but riderless. He turned and held the reins out to her. "Ride." She didn't move. "I don't understand." "You will." He mounted, and for a long moment, she stood there, half windblown, half frozen. Then something inside her snapped, or unfroze. She grabbed the reins and rode. By the time the sun began to drop behind the hills, her legs ached and her throat burned. But she didn't complain. They stopped in a small hollow, no fire, just wind and sage and the faint howl of coyotes far off. He handed her jerky and a canteen. She ate in silence, watching him across the small distance between them. Finally, she asked, "Why me?" He didn't look up. "Because they were going to sell you." Her chest tightened. "That man, Arliss?" He nodded. "He paid for a wife. A child wife. A body. Not a life." She looked away. "I didn't ask to be rescued." "You weren't rescued." Her head turned sharply. "You were claimed." The word hit her like a match strike in dry brush. "I'm not an object," she said, her voice trembling now. He met her eyes, and for the first time, something inside him flickered. Not anger, not apology, memory. No, but sometimes a name is the only shield a woman gets out here. That night she didn't sleep. Not fully. She watched him from beneath her thin blanket as he sat with his back to the wind, knife across his knee, gaze set on the darkness beyond. Not guarding against her, guarding for her. And for the first time since stepping off the train, she didn't feel alone. She felt claimed, and strangely, safer than she'd ever been. Not rescued, just seen. Next, the auctioneer's voice was hoarse from hours of selling. Chickens, rusted pots, 2 oxen with ribs poking out, and now her, the girl with the chopped hair. She stood barefoot on the wooden block, eyes down, shoulders hunched. The dress hung off her like it belonged to someone bigger, someone older, someone loved. They'd hacked her braid off that morning, said it would teach her humility. But the shame didn't live in her hair. It lived in how no one looked her in the eye. "How much for the servant girl?" the auctioneer barked. No one spoke. No one wanted her. She wasn't pretty. She wasn't tall. She wasn't a virgin anymore. Not since the judge's son got drunk last fall and made her his secret. They all knew, and they'd blamed her. "Start the bid at $5, the man said. Still no takers. She clenched her teeth and stared at her toes, covered in dust, as heat prickled behind her eyes. That's when she heard it. A voice, low, rusted and flat. "I'll take her." The crowd turned. He wasn't from town. No one had seen him before. A quiet man in a weathered duster. Gray at the temples. Scar on his cheek. His boots were scuffed, and his hat shadowed his eyes. He didn't say it again. Didn't haggle. Just stepped forward, handed the coin over, and waited. The auctioneer squinted. "You don't want to check her first? Ask if she can cook or so." The man said nothing. She followed him, not because she wanted to, because there was nowhere else to go. She expected a wagon, a chain, a rough grip on her wrist. Instead, he walked ahead of her, slow, never looking back to see if she followed, as if she were free to run. But she didn't. The world was wide and cruel. His cabin was 10 miles west. Quiet, clean, 2 chairs, a stove, a rocking bench on the porch. No rope, no locks. She stood awkwardly at the doorway while he poured water into a tin bowl and set a bar of lye beside it. He didn't speak, just pointed. She washed her hands, then sat at the edge of the bed, trembling, waiting. But he never touched her. Days passed. He said little, asked nothing. She gathered eggs, learned the rhythm of the place, how the boards creaked in the morning, when the crows came, what time he drank his coffee. Every night she sat in the rocker. Every night he sat on the porch. One evening, she asked, "Why'd you buy me?" He didn't look over. Tired of watching men treat women like cattle. She swallowed. "You could have just left." "I couldn't." "Why?" He finally turned to her and shrugged. "Because someone should have stopped them before." The next morning, she found a brush on the table. Beside it, a spool of ribbon, and tears she didn't know she still had welled in her eyes. They hadn't just cut her hair. They'd tried to cut her worth. But he never saw her as a shame, just a person, a soul, not rescued, returned to herself. She hadn't run far. The hem of her wedding dress was already torn, soaked in creek water and bramble blood. Her shoes were gone, left behind somewhere near the ravine, and the borrowed white veil hung loose around her neck like a noose that had missed its mark. She wasn't supposed to be married off like that. Not to a man 4 times her age. Not in a trade for cattle and fence posts. Not with her sister crying in the corner and her mother silent at the stove. So she waited until they all slept, and ran. Now the trees surrounded her, tall and dark, arms like bones reaching skyward. The only sound was the rush of her breathing, until it wasn't. Tum, she froze. It wasn't wind. It was a drum, low, rhythmic, carried on the air like something ancient. She crouched beneath a low limb and held her breath. Tum, closer now. She couldn't see anything, but the hair on her arms stood up. She wasn't sure if it was fear or something else. Something watching, not hunting, just waiting. She followed it. Maybe because she didn't know where else to go. Maybe because it felt older than fear. The forest opened slowly, revealing a small clearing lit by moonlight. At its center, firelight and figures in silence. A ring of people, brown-skinned, solemn, faces marked with paint. They didn't move, not even when she stepped into view. Only the man with the drum did. He stood tall. Not young, not old, with shoulders wrapped in a blanket patterned with symbols she didn't understand. His eyes found hers like they'd known her face in a dream long before she'd ever existed. She stopped walking. He spoke. "Take that off." She startled. "What?" He motioned to the veil. "That cloth on your throat. It belongs to them, not you." She hesitated. Then, with trembling fingers, she pulled the veil away and dropped it into the dirt. The woman beside him stirred the fire. A younger boy handed her water in a small clay bowl. Then, quietly, the man said, "You are not hunted here." They fed her. Soft bread and berries she hadn't tasted in years. One woman gently combed the burrs from her hair, murmuring a lullaby in a language she didn't know. When she cried, quietly, afraid to break the spell, no one shushed her. They simply let her be. By dawn, the fire had dimmed. The people disappeared into the trees, as if they were part of it. Only the drummer remained. He stood beside her, offering a bundle. Inside, worn boots, a knife, and a coat stitched with care. "Where will I go?" she asked. He looked toward the sunrise. "Where you choose." She looked down at her bruised feet, then back at the path behind her. And she knew she'd never return, because for the first time in her life, she had chosen to be seen, and something had answered. The river rose faster than it should have. Rain hadn't fallen in weeks, but the storm upstream had broken loose like a curse. By the time the rancher saw the water swallowing the canyon edge, it was already too late to turn back. And that's when he spotted her. A girl, maybe 16, clutching the twisted limb of a half-submerged tree. Her dress was soaked, hair plastered to her face. One arm waved weakly, the other gripped the bark like her life depended on it. It did. He didn't hesitate. Threw the reins over a broken stump, waded into the current, boots vanishing beneath the brown surge. Each step was a war. Roots pulled, rocks shifted, but he kept his eyes on her. Her lips moved silent. Not a scream, a plea. By the time he reached her, her grip had slipped. She floated backward, eyes wide, mouth open. When he grabbed her wrist and yanked her toward him, her body was too light, too thin, and cold like river stone. He got her to shore, laid her down on the wet grass. She coughed, rolled to her side, and vomited water. That's when he saw it. The iron collar, thick, rusted, bolted shut around her neck like something meant for livestock or worse. No nameplate, no key. He blinked. What in God's name? She flinched, sat up fast, then froze, one hand flying to the collar like it was her shame. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Her eyes said enough. He didn't press, just wrapped his coat around her and helped her to the horse. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't speak. But when he reached down to lift her into the saddle, she tensed, then allowed it. Because something told her this man wouldn't chain her again. Back at the ranch, he stoked the fire, found old soup, and gave her a dry blanket. Still no questions. Just quiet. When she fell asleep in the corner chair, he studied the collar again. It wasn't just rusted, it had scorch marks, like someone tried to burn it off once. And failed. The next morning, she stood at the window, staring at the hills like she'd never seen them in daylight. "I can take it off," he said gently. Her hand went to the collar again. "They said, if I ever let anyone break it, they'd find me. They won't. They always do." He didn't answer with words, just stepped into the shed, grabbed the iron saw, and came back. When she saw him kneel, saw the blade, saw that he wasn't afraid, she finally whispered, "Okay." The metal screamed when it broke. And when it hit the ground with a thud, she gasped, not from pain, but from something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. She never asked to stay, but she never left. And though her voice stayed quiet for a long, long time, her laughter, the day it came, was louder than the river had ever been. The first thing he saw were her feet, bare, bloody, covered in dirt and gravel. She was running like the devil himself was behind her. But there was no one, just dust and silence and her small figure racing down the long road that split his ranch in half. The rancher stood frozen on his porch, coffee in one hand, mind still waking up. Then he saw the iron shackles, one still clamped to her ankle, the other half broken, dragging behind with a dull metal clink every time her foot hit the road. She stumbled, fell, didn't cry out, just scrambled back up and kept running. He dropped the mug, was at the gate by the time she reached it. She looked up, young, maybe 20, face sunburnt, eyes wild, dress torn at the shoulder, a welt across her jaw, dark and fresh. "Please," she gasped, "don't send me back." He didn't ask where, didn't need to, He opened the gate, not with hesitation, with purpose. She crossed the threshold and collapsed just past it, arms wrapped around herself like she finally knew she was safe. He knelt beside her. "You're all right. You're on my land now." She blinked through tears. "They said I wasn't allowed to look at the sky unless I earned it." The rancher looked up. Clear blue. Morning sun just peeking. He helped her to her feet and whispered, "You can look all you want now." Inside, she flinched at every creak of the floorboards. Sat in the corner, knees hugged to her chest, while he fetched food and a clean shirt. "Name's Eli," he said, keeping his voice low. She didn't give hers. But later, after he cut the shackles off with a rusted bolt cutter, she traced 3 letters into the soft flower dust on the table. Mia. He fixed up the guest room, put a bell by her door in case she needed anything. She never rang it, but sometimes at night, she'd stand on the porch barefoot, staring out at the dark road she came from. And Eli? He stood quietly behind her, never asking questions, just keeping watch. Weeks passed. She spoke more, laughed once, helped him patch a fence. But one day, when she found a wagon wheel leaning against the barn, the same kind used to chain people beneath, she froze. He saw it, took it straight into the fire, watched it melt. She didn't thank him. She didn't have to. Her hands trembled less the next morning. Months later, when the man who owned her came riding into town, loud, proud, looking for a girl with eyes like burnt honey, the sheriff turned him away, said no such girl ever came through. And out on Eli's ranch, Mia helped plant seeds. Wearing boots now, free now, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't running. She was rooted.